Gosh, that's another difficult one. I think Thomas Harris is an interesting case, because I think when you're dealing with psychopathic serial killers, you have a choice. You can go two ways. You can go the way that Bram Stoker went, and you create this apex predator. There's no the reader is not invited to try and figure out why this person does what he or she does. It's just an enormous, larger-than-life personality, and you just accept it. That's the way they are. They were born that way. That's one way you can deal with it. And actually, I think that's the way Harris dealt with it initially with Hannibal Lecter. The sort of investigations into the antecedents and the psychology and the childhood and all of that came later. When we first meet him, he's a kind of finished product. You're not invited into the psychology in the same way. But I wanted to have people who behaved in an extraordinary way, but to explore real-world reasons for why they might have become like that. Yes, I think partly because I wanted the novel to have the sense that the momentum was already up and running. So you're taking the reader and putting them straight into the middle of everything that's going on. But the burnout thing is, excuse me, the burnout thing, of course, is not uncommon anyway within the genre. Lots of detectives have drink problems or drug problems or marriage problems or crisis of religious faith or something. And it's partly, well, I think just we're naturally drawn to people who are not super competent, who are not operating at the top of their game. It's much more sympathetic to see somebody who is doing a very difficult job, but also doing it when they're in a state of, weakness or imperfection or disrepair. So to me, it seemed a much more sympathetic starting premise, and also it gives me a lot more scope for the characters. They're perfect people are boring. Well, yes. I think I'm somebody who spends a lot of time remembering his past, and to my mind anyway, the past is resonating inside all of us all the time. We may think of ourselves as having moved on from things or become more psychologically resolved, but it's always fascinating to me, whether a character is good or bad or indifferent, to keep playing back on what has gone into the making of that psychology. So it's unavoidable for me. It's a natural way to write. It's two things. It's partly what you've just said, which is that I don't really believe in good and evil. I believe that we are malleable according to our circumstances. I'm not a believer in somebody who is just born bad or born good. Although there is evidence now for the psychopathic gene, which is very interesting. So I always want to look at all the gradations of character. That even the worst of us might have a fleck of good, and even the most saintly amongst us might, in the right circumstances, be tempted to do something that we oughtn't. So that's just the way I see people and the way I see the world. But the other thing, of course, is that lots of the characters are facing death. At some moment or other in the narrative, lots of these people are brought very close to death or into contact with death. Obviously Valerie on a daily basis. But in the moment of facing death, my imagination tells me that your life kind of would flash before your eyes, or that in moments of extremis, the divisions between past and present get blurred. That's just an imaginative belief on my part. I've never been that close to death, but I imagine that if I was, it might feel something like that your past would be detonating in the middle of this present terror.